We've all hired that person. The perfect resume, a flawless interview. And then 6 months down the road, we realize that their character is derailing the entire team. Why does that happen? And how do we stop it? I'm Nannan, and I'd like to take the next few minutes to talk about how understanding a candidate's character makeup is the key to identifying truly exceptional hires. And by character, I mean specifically their integrity, their humility, their accountability, their respect for their peers, their confidence, and their level of grit. Over the last 20 years, there has been an exponential boom in the number of candidate assessment tools available on the market. In 2005, there were only about 100 to 150 tools available, and today there's over 1,500, a 1,400% increase. And yet, over that same time period, if we look at the percentage of companies who reported making a bad hire in the last year, that number has remained relatively unchanged, improving by only about 10%. Now, that's not to suggest that all the tools are completely useless, but what it does indicate is that they're all missing something critically important, and that's the ability to assess for a candidate's character. The data around it is quite clear. Employees with strong work ethic and honesty have 50% lower turnover rates. And in a 2011 Baylor University study, it showed that character-based assessments can account for nearly a 55% lift in employee performance versus traditional methods. It's indisputable. Character matters greatly in how someone actually shows up at work. So how are companies attempting to assess for character today? Well, the truth is the methods are risky and incomplete at best. Behavioral interviews are nice in theory, but the truth is any seasoned candidate can rehearse their way through it and spin the stories in a way that makes them look good. Traditional reference checks are this vestigial feature that some companies still employ, but the candidate provides all the references, so it's a completely stacked deck. And back channeling, while it can yield some objective data points, there are scalability issues there, as well as ethical concerns. So what's the right way to do this? Well, as employers, what we want is we want to have a large number of data points about a candidate's character from people who have actually worked with them in the past, and most importantly, to do so with the candidate's full consent. And that's exactly what we built here at KANNY. So let's take a look at a report for a sample candidate named Alec. And what we see here is that his assessment of his own character is significantly higher than that of the independent reviewers. And ironically, the independent reviewers rate him even higher than his own references. But understanding this delta gives us really important insight into this candidate's self-perception as well as their level of self-awareness. It's also useful to look at this data against benchmarks, whether it's against KANNY's benchmark or your own company's benchmark. So as you're considering this candidate, you can understand whether hiring them will add to the character composition of your team or potentially detract from it. It's important to understand the context around this data. So what was their work relationship? When did they work together? And how long did they work together for? So for example, a candidate's managers may have very different things to say about how they show up at work versus their direct reports. And lastly, and I think most interestingly, is the ability to view this data longitudinally. When we interact with candidates, it's at the singular point in time. But if we think about their development and their career, it's on an arc, and it's important to understand the trajectory of that arc. So let's zoom in on one particular trait here, which is Alec's grit. And what we see here is that 5+ years ago, his grit was quite good. In his last role, it was a little bit less good. And now in his current role, it's better than ever. We also know that based on the information from the reviewers, that people who have worked with Alec for longer have better things to say about his grit. Now, there are plenty more insights that we can dive into, but ultimately, we have to remember that character is what determines whether someone owns up to their mistakes, whether they uplift their team, and whether they stay when things get hard. So let's make sure to measure it. Thank you.